The show starts in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go.
Well, it's a twofer week again, and this has been a long time in the making, has to be said, but I'm sure it's worth waiting for. This is the Empowerment Show Part 1, and it is fairly packed and fairly long, and I'm sure you'll all enjoy it. This is the Truth, Honour and Integrity Show. My name's Thomas Williams. Enjoy the show. Right, let's get into this show. And the long-awaited self-empowerment show has finally arrived and will now be presented to you. Something that has been in the works for well over 2 years, but with all being so busy within that time, this piece went on to the I know you're busy but back burner, so to speak. Too much gnashing of teeth from certain individuals, including a former member who pestered me to do this show. Well, here it is. But as always, many of whom lack something essential in this process called patience. And it is your greatest climb you will undertake, the proverbial Everest and back, but like that mountain climb, it requires preparation, endurance and stamina to undertake that climb. I said to some members on the trip to Arizona, we took back in May 2022, you cannot, with self-empowerment and soul development, jump from A to Z. It doesn't and will never work that way. The fact is, it can't. The A to Z, including all the letters in between, most of which have been taken up by the gender crew these days. Alas, I digress. But the B to Y are also important on what I call the great journey of discovery. Like in life, you have to learn to walk before you can run, unless you wish to fall over all the time, and yet many do. Faking it until you make it will not apply on these levels. This is a marathon, not a sprint. This requires much input from the self and cannot be dabbled at, unless of course you don't wish to make it or develop along the way. Nobody, and I repeat, nobody can do this for you. It is a soul and soul journey that requires patience, much application and inner willpower to be able to develop yourselves far beyond this earthly plane of existence. The riches, payback and benefits of this work are beyond your own comprehension for those starting out. No external gratification, money, wealth, status or title is comparable to it. It is your most arduous journey, but like all other weight clubs, it brings tangible results and enormous benefits. It no longer requires you to believe in others. You will see things and places and do things for yourself. It is also a very strange and lonely path, where the self-questioning kicks in heavily. And people, including myself, when the magic kicks in, begin to question themselves. Is it real? Am I imagining it all? What is happening and why me? But why not you? Because why me means you think you are not good enough to receive these inherent gifts. Why would you think that way? the spark of creation, which is a miracle in itself, not being good enough? Turn it in and get out of your own way. Never try to understand it all. You won't. Largely because you are thinking in 3D terms, and that rarely brings understanding. You have to retrain your thinking to other dimensions, and even then you will still not know all that you wish. The simple solution to that is, it is what it is, until I understand more. And one hopes you all have the courage to wash away your illusions, and this show will show you the way. The opening section to this show. This whole planet has been in a reduction and retraction phase on all levels. And what we are doing now is called expansion, not retraction, and it will be a long road ahead. But the road is now created and people can see it. Before, it never seemed to exist. And that is the difference between now and then. The path previously was created for you. It was the road to hell, and we all walked blindly down it. And this is why all have to take responsibility going forward, as getting others to do all things for us has clearly not worked, otherwise this show wouldn't exist. Rahu and Ketu are the proverbial blue and red pill. Like I've said, choose neither. They were not your choices. The same applies to politicians. None of them are your choices either. They are their choices for you to vote on. Step back and think is the key. A member asked a question. So someone who is self-aware, has good judgment, wise, of strong character, would not fall prey to Rahu. Exactly. And the value of inner work is revealed right there. You won't be affected by Ketu or Dark Forces enticement programs either. And the answer to every question posed is you. Ponder long and hard on that statement. Do you follow what is normal? Nor use before the second or last of a set of negative possibilities, and mal means bad. Wrongful or ill, like illusion. Normal is a reflection of limitation and no imagination. Limitation is the dark void holding nothingness and no matter. And that brings in words like impossible, when you can change it to I'm possible. Now, if everyone does that with personal responsibility, humility and ego in balance, then we have a real change, and it all starts with you. And these two paragraphs ended the From His Story to Our Story 8B show. And it was a heads up for those who tune into the narrative and not just look at the statement. And it said, the event horizon is in sight now. It will bring down the curtain of your darkness, and the light of the few will shine brighter than you can imagine. Our time has come, and theirs has ended. The winds of change are blowing through their valleys of the shadows of death. We will fear no evil, for we will conquer evil. For you are with me, your support and your courage, they comfort me and us. I said also back then that I kept warning certain things were close, following the day of the Svarog on March 21st, 2020. The dark is now into the light. The hidden background war is now won, and I can confirm the war will now be played out in the public arena. it will reveal so much. You cannot expose, take down and reveal the dark without it getting or looking ugly. It is what they are, the masters of deceit. Do not fear this, embrace it as an achievement. We have forced them out of their shadows, and it will get ugly. There is no question of that. Banks are now fallen. Devious technology has fallen. Expect disruption, expect chaos, but you are tasked with driving a new way and path, and accept that role and use it wisely. That world, I said back then, must crumble, and remember, everything that falls must be replaced with a new. Stay calm, remain grounded, shielding the must, reinforce it, and above all stay 45-55. THI was tasked as the guardians of the trust. We don't need titles, certificates, degrees or decrees to do that. We just be it. Stand in your guardianship and act the right way. THI is also tasked with driving a new way of being human. We will not be replicating the old version, which failed on all levels. And you must understand that, embrace that, and be the beacon. The real value of THI will not be recognised until a much later in time, except for the few who didn't just listen, but tuned into its frequency. It laid out the framework of how to go forward. It gave you an entry into the many closed doors. It got you to see, not just look. It connected the dots and revealed the hidden world. Now is our time to not only use that for good use and practice, but embrace the message of THI. Inclusive, not exclusive. Need, not greed. Service to others, not service to the self. Empathy, not cold-hearted detachment. A move to what is real, not fakery and illusion. You cannot fake it anymore. Your frequencies are telling, which is a heads up to those who haven't done their inner and shadow work, or enough of it. You are and will be exposed. Put aside your own stupidity, pettiness, illusion, fakery masks, division, delusion, violence, and be the new you, a being of light. Not the low vibrational astral level being you've become. The sky is not the limit. Reach for the stars from whence you came and then go beyond. Open the doors to expansion, denounce limitation, embrace evolution, not devolution. Aspire, not perspire. Reverse, not inverse. Love, not hate. Vibrate to the love frequency, not the quiver dance of fear. You are not the likeness of or the image. You are you. You are the guardian of yours and our destiny. The only domain you need to reside in is the domain of the wise, which is the wisdom. The next section is the biggest problems we face. And this world has a pandemic of low vibration, low self-worth, and insecurity people. And those three descriptions make up the vast majority of people around the world. It is the real pandemic, and why we have to stop dragging each other down and instead lift each other up. Unbeknown to many, unbalanced ego of overinflating the self is the condition of covering up the low self-worth. Every braggart is covering up their failure to address their own low self-worth issues. They are acting like they are confident, but a few leading questions causes them to buckle or react angrily and start projecting. And often they ignore the question and begin stating what they have done or can do, often in comparison to others. But these people always feel they have to prove themselves. Did anyone ask why you have to prove anything to anyone but yourself? Why is the self-approval not sought? And yet people will often seek the external gratification or approval over themselves. That is a lack of trust of the self. And you cannot soul develop in any meaningful way without near full trust of the self, which requires inward love, trust, approval, not external versions, most of which are fake anyway. People met each other, whether in relationships or friendships, because they were both low vibration, low self-worth and insecure people. It is the magnetic attraction effect, the frequency effect. You were attracted to the same frequency. And when you understand everything is about frequency, this makes more sense. But here is the kicker. Love is a high vibrational frequency. So how can you love, or how can love operate in a low vibrational field? The answer is, it can't. It is a version of love we have adapted to on a low vibrational scale, but it's not real love. It is a copy, a mirror image, an illusion of what is real. We have spoken in the past of you either choosing love or fear. Fear is low vibration and an absence of love. Love is the higher vibration and an absence of fear. So you cannot love in a low vibrational, low self-worth and personally insecure status or frequency. You are only imagining it. How do we know that? Because they tell you in their words. They tell you to fall in love, or you fell in love. But why do you need to fall to be in love? You don't, and you can't. We all need to rise to be in love. Change the terminology. I rose in love, I have risen in love, I have elevated in love. The next section is the lack of personal responsibility. This topic has plagued humanity for thousands of years, both on an individual level and a collective level. It is on a collective level of abject laziness, a child-level program, and it's also demeaning to the soul. People all too content to let others do things for them. That means if things go wrong, they have someone else to blame. And that is why many rely on the government. But governments fail because the people don't take any responsibility for it. How many people actually help the politicians? None. So why would you expect them to help us? In America, 534 people looking after the whole country of 330 million people. Do you think that is A, fair, or B, practical? And people have become so frightened of failure that it prevents them becoming who they should be or what they want to do. And failure is an opportunity to see where you went wrong. A failure brings lessons, the same as mistakes. And remember, a winner is a loser who got back up and gave it one more try. So the key to mastery of the self is internally. The we must become the I. Externally, the I must become the we. External only truly becomes possible with an internal mastered. Otherwise, it is all an illusion of what you believe you are doing, not what you are doing. This next section is called Rules for a Human. And it is understanding what it means to be human. The rules for being human, which is handed down from the Urs, the Santis and Sanskrit, which is not in Indian, I might add, said the following. 1. You will receive a body. You may not like it or not, but it will be yours for the entire period round. And so from my perspective of that, you look after it, treasure it, respect it, and grow it, is my opinion. 2, you will learn lessons. You are enrolled in a full-time informal school called life. Each day in this school, you will have an opportunity to learn lessons. You may like the lessons or think them irrelevant or stupid. My comments on that, those are your choices to make. That is the triality, your own choices. But the triality comes with personal responsibility. Because in triality, only you make them choices. And ultimately, you become responsible for them. 3, there are no mistakes, only lessons. Growth is a process of trial and error and experimentation. The failed experiments are as much as part of the process as the experiment that ultimately works. My input on that, what works best for you? No lessons equals no growth, or make a few mistakes and learn, which then equals growth. 4, a lesson is repeated until it is learned. A lesson will be presented to you in various forms until you have learned it. Then you go on to the next lesson. My input, the key is to stop looping and repeating the same failed lessons over and over. You do realise how much of a waste of energy that is. It's okay to be wrong. It's okay to make mistakes. What is not okay on either point is to keep repeating them and expecting different results. 5, learning lessons does not end. There is no part of life that doesn't contain its lessons. If you are alive, there are lessons to be learnt. Indeed, I would say. And hiding from lessons is a stupid exercise. We all need growth, not levels of stupidity. 6, there is no better than here. When your there has become here, you will simply obtain another there that will again look better than here. And in my opinion, this brings in 2 points. A, the grass is always greener over there. It is not. It is not possible for all alternatives to be better. there is a lesson in there for the I am going to 5D crew. But this section brings in change, something far too many people are reluctant to do. Yet too many spend endless weeks, months or years complaining of their poor life, their job, their love partners, their towns or cities, or even their politicians, and yet choose to keep the status quo, which is another looping practice. 7. Others are merely mirrors of you. You cannot love or hate something about another person unless it reflects to you something that you love or hate about yourself. My input on that? Oh my. What a harsh lesson to learn that is. But it is true. Hatred of another person is hatred of some aspect of the self. And once we all grasp that fact and use that hatred to find out within ourselves that of which we hate, then the lesson and healing can begin again. You often hear yourself or others saying, I don't like such and such a person. I hate this or that person. I don't trust this or that person. That person doing that does not like, hates and trusts themselves. And we can all point fingers away from us, but our external stances on other people are a reflection of the status within and of ourselves. 8. What you make of your life is up to you. You have all the tools and resources you need. What you do with them is up to you. The choice is yours. My opinion, exactly. Life is what you make it. And again, this is often a finger pointing away exercise and blame everything and everyone for life's ills, when you have dissolved your own responsibility for your own life. 9. The answers lie inside of you. The answers to life questions lie inside of you, and all you need to do is look, listen and trust. Interesting, it only had 9 points, the number of completion, the open spiral cycle and not the closed loop. And 3 or 4 of those categories that showed where people went wrong involved loop cycle decision making and expecting different results. As we have said many times, the answers lie within you, not from me. If you look, you will see. If you listen, you will hear. And all that is left then is, do you trust yourself enough to accept what you've seen and heard? The old failing in humanity runs real deep, of falling for the magic seducement of pieces of paper and the saviour programs, when the real gain is in soul development. That doesn't require any money to do so, and the idea of a saviour is abhorrent to a soul-developed being. Remember, at the end of your life, all the pieces of paper you collected count for nothing. You cannot take it with you. But you know what you do take with you into the next lifetime? Karma and soul development. A very popular song from THI. I'm up off my knees, girl. I'm face to face with myself. And I know who I am. That is what it means about being human. I stole the power from the sun, and I'm more than just a man. I'm not asking questions, because questions have answers. But there are no questions and there are no answers. I came down from the stars, and what are the chances I could advance on my own circumstances? And this is what this show is all about, and THI in general. But this next section, the I and we. Is it the true story of King Arthur of Ayr and the sword? Life is the mirror, and when you add more mirrors, is there not more versions of you? But I thought you were just one. What is real and what is the illusion? Is it not the case everything in life is inverted, the same as the mirror? Life today is about things being external when all is internal. And with the external, the focus of most people is the I and not the we, and this leads to selfish agendas. Life is all about me and others don't matter. The endless world of comparison and competition that has so damaged us all. And so on the external, we are attempting to pull back the I and then focus on the we, which is not an easy task, as many of you have found out. It is not an easy program to break. And then we have the inversion of the internal aspects, as within, so without. Internally, we are programmed to be the we and not the I, which is the reverse of our external traits. It is the we he is talking about, many will ask. What is the we he is talking about, many will ask? The we is in the brain, the two dueling hemispheres. One hemisphere says, I want to do this. The other side hemisphere kicks in and says, oh, come on, you're too old, you're too weak, you can't learn this and you can't do that. And this is the we that we're dealing with internally. And how many of you have said, I would love to do this, and then the excuses crop up of why you can't. And this all takes place inside of us. Some would say, I would love to go to, for example, a paradise beach, but the kids, the school, the time off work, the money, and the same applies to the projects many of you are working on. I can't take part in this project because blah, blah, blah. Well, that is the limitation program installed into your brain. And shutting it off is the key. And so internally, many face the problem of the dueling hemispheres, which is the we, and combining them together as one with the positive and the all possible side, it becomes the I. The I internally, when mastered, makes the we externally far easier. And this is about you claiming your own sovereignty over the self, which may seem bizarre until you fully grasp what is actually going on inside of your own head. And it starts with what you consent to, and ends when you consent to only things and thoughts beneficial to you. And if you doubt this exercise, then remember the head mind can be controlled by external forces. The heart can't. And once you have mastered the hemispheres, the next stage of the trinity within the head is to merge it with the third eye, the single unseen eye, that can see more than the visual two eyes once that stage is complete. The next stage is, providing the throat chakra is not blocked, is the cord to the heart. And that is where your magic kicks in. Inherent magic. As operating from there opens many doors, physical and non-physical. More senses than our basic limiting 5 senses, and the real definition of the warrior with the sword manifests. The two hemispheres are the two side handles. The third eye is the upper handle, and the cord to the heart is the blade. The blade, like the mirror, is double-edged. Use it wisely and it will serve you. Use unwisely and it will cut you. And that requires responsibility. Yet many don't like the responsibility, and so why too few achieve their own mastery. People all too content to let others do for them. That means if things go wrong, like I said earlier, they have someone else to blame. And like I said earlier, that is why so many people rely on governments. But governments fail because we, the people, don't take responsibility for it. Not because of politicians. Why? Because you are responsible having selected them and by not making them accountable. And so ultimately the people are responsible for the plight of the country and the government and have neglected it to allow someone else to take the blame. But this is why self-mastery is important. But because people have become so frightened of failure that it prevents them becoming who they should be or what they want to be or do. And so how can you gain self-mastery if you're frightened of failure or being wrong? But failure is just an opportunity to see where you went wrong. Failure ultimately brings learning lessons, just like mistakes. And so the key to self-mastery is, internally the we must become the I. Externally the I must become the we, which is dealing with the ego problem. And external only truly becomes possible with the internal mastered. Otherwise, it is all an illusion of what you believe you are doing, not what you are doing. The next stage is the PSI field. Imagine your PSI field. Others call it the aura. It's like an item of clothing. You love that worn out old jacket and refuse to replace it. But it's not the jacket you hold on to, it is the frequency of it. Also comfortable despite the holes, the tears and being out of shape. You hold on to it until it falls off your back, or the wife and girlfriend bins it on trash day so you can't recover it. And the same applies to our PSI field on an individual and collective level. But the question is, how will you fare walking in a 50-mile-an-hour blizzard of snow with that jacket on? Not too well. Now the wearer may change jackets, yet many choose to ignore their own personal jacket and leave holes in it. Wander around life in a blizzard of negative frequencies day after day, and then wonder why life is not so good. And some will say, well, I can't see it, so it's not real. No one can see air, but we still breathe it. No one can see God, Jesus, or Muhammad, but 4.5 billion still believe it. And so denying its existence is a frequency-based suicide program. Now imagine inside the jacket a cup filled with oil, and you attempt to clean that cup with water. What happens? The oil stays and the water skims off, and so neither the cup or the item of clothing gets cleansed. It just sits there. Except unlike the cup or the jacket, ours festers, expands, proliferates, and then weighs us down. The cup, which is the inner you, is filled with negative frequencies of anger, frustration, anguish, envy, insecurities, inferiority complex, little me, victimhood and saviour programs, hurt, pain and traumas. A vicious cocktail of frequencies, none of which is helpful to you in this life or future lives for that matter. A thick, viscous soup that leaves you, in essence, like walking through life in treacle. Molasses for Americans. And so that is what you have become, a thick soup. And then we come to the garment you wear, known as your PSI field. Again, that is thick in oil, full of holes and tears. And you try to wash it off and it rolls off. It's too greasy or slippery. And so you have to break it down to clean that field also. A PSI field full of holes is an entrance point for astral level infections, dark spirits, and extinct critters. For those new, cancer comes from an astral level infection, not the physical level. Your field is filled with your own inner trauma and also the angers and frustration of everyone else in your close environment or you engage with. Do you think you can thrive in that environment? Do you think your inner light can shine like a beacon in that environment? You can't, because the oil is that thick and not enough of your inner light penetrates it. And so you have become a walking stream of negative, lower level frequencies. Your PSI field is connected to other low level frequencies, and you become a walking Wi-Fi delivery system of negative frequencies and entities that you drag them through your lives day after day. At some point, everyone has a fallout with someone, be it vocally and or with violence, and you no longer speak to that person, and you think that that is that. No. You have a tentacle or cord still connected with that frequency or person because you never let it go. Now imagine all the other tentacles you have with all the other people you have had bad interactions with. You have become like a villain trapped by Spider-Man, meshed in a negative web that you may perceive was not your doing, but a differing percentage of that interaction was down to you and your reactions to it. The reactions to all situations determines your future. And this is why your shadow and inner work is the most important thing you can do. You repeat behaviours and bad scenarios in your life because you didn't address the previous ones. I guess it's time to cut some cords, is it not? And to do that, you have to have belief in yourself. Ignore the false external authority figures like doctors and psychotherapists, and you become your own doctor and therapist. You are the doctor and the therapist. How can someone else truly understand your body or feelings? They can't. It's just another illusion game. Every sexual intercourse encounter you have had creates a cord also. So whilst it was fun at the time you notched up all those sexual encounters, perhaps it was not the best interaction for you overall, was it? And I imagine some of you thinking back now of the ones they have slept with and thinking, I did not want to hear that. Well, I've said all along, you will hear what you need to know. And that sexual cord lasts for 7 years. The global PSI field is also a thick treacle or molasses, mired in discord, disconnection, distortions and lies. Your PSI field you wear is based on lies and the masking of lies that you have embraced, because it is or was not the real you, was it? We've all worn masks to cover our own perceived weaknesses. A dropping of the mask leaves the real you. If you don't like the real you, or not enough of the real you is being shown, that is up to you to correct it. We accepted the narrative fed to us and it became part of our field, and like the old worn out jacket, we held onto it for far too long. But there is a tiny light inside of you that is chirping away, going, this field, this life, and your whole reality is wrong. The whole field holds all the lies we have been fed on and in all aspects of life. The field then is like an AI copy of an illusion. It is a mask. But we are not Phantom of the Opera men or women. We are a shining beacon. So why do we all dull that light with lies and trauma? As your inner light gets bigger, following you cutting more of your cords for your inner work, you reach a tipping point where the light shines more than the early dark shadows, and the soul is screaming at you to get the trauma and lies out of the field. And this is your knowledge-based awakening, and suddenly things start to make more sense. The fog has been lifted, and your inner and outer vision is suddenly a whole lot clearer. Reality just walked in your door and slapped you out of your self-induced coma, and no more back in the permanent sleeper pods for you. And once this process has removed most of the cords and traumas, it is always ongoing. At this stage, you cannot undo what you have learned and go back, because that you no longer exists. Why? Because you are no longer in that field or frequency anymore. And finally, your life, you begin to grow. Think of it in terms of the Russian dolls. It is an illusion there are several dolls. In reality, there is only one you. Your mind created all the rest. The heart doesn't do that. And so despite all your cords, disconnections, traumas, strife, pain and consuming volumes of negative frequencies and the lies, proudly and stubbornly wearing your masks of illusion, having slept for vast parts of your life, you had clever manipulators pulling strings in the background, walking through life in a vast vat of treacle. You came out the other side and shine your beacons of light as only an organic human can. But you also have to give yourselves all a pat on the back for even getting this far. But you're still waiting for the event. You were the event. And the key to removing traumas, cords, altars and host possession is to go inward, process what took place, forgive yourself and the others, heal it, and then let it go. The next section is mind-thought contracts. We often receive negative and or dire thoughts from day to day. But I wonder how many of you stop to question it. Where did it come from? Why is this thought in my head? The greater question is, what does it actually mean or its purpose? Those thoughts sent to your mind, which can be controlled by external forces, are actually contracts offered to you by the dark forces and their minions. And people may often receive these contract offers when driving, and suddenly you are thinking of crashing, running over people or an animal, or going over the cliff. And again, these are contract offers for you to accept that negative reality. Counteracting it is simple, but it requires a change of thought pattern that eventually becomes your modus operandi. When you receive the contract, recognize it as such, and then deny consent verbally or with inner spoken words. Say or think it clear, I do not consent. It is all about discipline and awareness, and you must exhibit that as close to 100% of the time. It does take time to learn, but less so with more awareness. You will get it in the end, but it is retraining the brain to operate in a differing state than previously. It will also help with your awareness of your environment when you are away from home, presuming you have protected and shielded your home. When getting into the car, it requires saying protect the car and the occupant or occupants every time you get in it. Eventually, it becomes second nature. The same applies when getting out of the car and going into supermarkets, shops, bars and workplaces. Always protect your field. Do not assume others have clear fields. Your responsibility is protecting you. And eventually you will not have to see, but you will sense ahead. And that comes with total awareness of your surroundings. The next section is the metronome and the balance. Life is all about swings, high and low, ups and downs. Like the metronome is just doesn't stop unless you interact with it. And the key to it is don't get too down if things are not going your way, and don't get too up if things are. Just take it all in your stride. Operate in the 45-55 range, as a 5% correction is manageable, 20, 30 or 40% are not. And so you have to alter your path. And the first thing you have to look at and do is be honest with yourself. And that's a lot harder than many people think. We lie to ourselves constantly and then recreate an image of us to present to others. But that is a mask and subsequently an illusion. It is like being in the Hall of Mirrors. You become distorted. And so how can a distorted image be the best version of you? Well, no matter how many times you lie to yourself and your circle, it's just not you. And again, this is why the shadow and inner work is so important. But it only reaps benefits by being honest with yourself. It will be painful doing that work, as the onion layers you have created of not addressing the issues mounted up and became much larger than it ever needed to be. And the traumas and the pain, the anxieties, shame, guilt and anger all bubble to the surface. But they all have to be transmuted into something more positive. And that can take time depending on the individual. It is a process. It won't take one session or even 2 weeks. It can take years depending on how many layers or how condensed the low vibrational frequencies are. Stop trusting the plan. This is not an external cue game. Trust your own process with your own plan. But as each layer is processed, released, or at peace with, those gaps have to be replaced with something more positive and a higher vibrational frequency, and preferably source-based energies. And the first thing to do after releasing it is praise yourself for the accomplishment of overcoming that hurdle. A hurdle you have held on to because you couldn't face it. But now that you have, praise away. Self-praise, when in truth, can lift you far higher than external praise can ever do. And this will perhaps make you realise how many of you knock yourselves lower by your own comments. And once you've released those traumas, suddenly you will feel lighter. Why? Because your lower frequency has been reduced. And those low frequencies weigh heavy on our body's immune system, mind and heart, making it dense and anchoring it to the 3D. When it becomes lighter, that is heading towards 4D. And in 4D, you are 10% of the denseness you are in 3D. That is why you feel lighter. And this also reduces the chances of you becoming ill also, as most heart conditions are not because the person smokes or eats fatty food. It is because the heart has been put under too much stress and the person has not adequately dealt with. It applies with all the other conditions as well. In overview again, you have become your own doctor, with the added bonus of saving you and your family lots of medical bills and prescriptions. But staying and keeping in balance is an important step for you all to master. The next section, the heart, not the mind, thinking, acting and being. We have spoken many times of speaking, thinking and acting from the heart, not the head. The heart has more neurons than the brain, and so you are more than capable of thinking from there than the head. The other benefits of it is the heart cannot be mind controlled like the brain. Your brain often argues with you in decision making due to the split of the hemispheres. And this is overcome by self-mastery and recognizing the parts of you that don't serve you and adapting more to the parts that do. The sword effect completes the inner anomaly once it is perfected. Having got free of the solar plexus and throat chakra blocks society imposes on you, but remember, you allowed it. The solar plexus is the third chakra, and in my opinion, linked to the astral level, as I believe the chakras are linked to the 7 levels of earth progression. And this is why society uses the mind control meme of go with your gut, or what does your gut say? You know that is a program, as it doesn't make sense. And science recently has just proven all that we have revealed on our show in relation to the heart, whereby it said a scientifically controlled study conducted by German researchers at the University of Kassel has shown that while the chest area of an average person emits only 20 photons of light per second, someone who meditates on their heart center and sends love and light to others emits an amazing 100,000 photons per second. The average person emits 20 photons of light. Those operating in the heart center, 100,000 photons of light per second. The term light up your beacons makes more sense now, doesn't it? That is 5,000 times more than the average human being. And numerous studies have also shown that when these photons are infused with a loving and healing intent, their frequency and vibration increases to the point where they can literally change matter, heal disease, and transform negative events. All proving that operating from the heart increases the chances of you gaining the abilities mentioned earlier. The heart also loves, feels, thinks and remembers, and communicates with other hearts. It stores information and continually with each beat pulses this information through your body. It is far more than what modern science would have you believe. It is also a pump that pumps the cellular symphony that is the very essence of your being. And it is a magnetic and radiating vortex and the true source of human power. A radiating vortex, as above, so below, springs to mind. Also as within, also without fits nicely as well. And the heart is the centre of your own vortex. Time to let it flow and also to fire it up. The next section is healing techniques. The more you learn to master the self, vibrate higher and develop onto the mental planes where your abilities can kick in, then one of the skill sets is healing, whether thyself or others. And you get yourself into a meditation-like state and visualize the area of disease, injury or trauma site. Eventually you get to see where the problem is and you can address it. It requires a strong belief and trust of the self. No mind interactions before, when in preparation or during it. This is a heart center practice only. Pull in source energy and some of your own energy and push it into the area of concern and set the intention of healing. If it is an issue with a joint, then check out the shape of the other joint to then feel where it is different. And once you get a mental picture of it, you can then imprint the other better joint and overlay it onto the damaged joint. If there is inflammation, add cooling to it to calm the area of concern. And this can be done to yourself or to other people next to you. With greater training and development, it can also be done over long distances to help people as well. But remember, if you are doing this correctly, it will drain you. And so you have to be careful of how many times you do it. Plus the gaps in between the sessions have to be spaced out to allow time for recovery. And if done properly, you are giving part of your own life force energy for the healing to the patient. And so exercise caution of how much you do it. The next section is clearing, centering, grounding and shielding in that order. We have often mentioned the original grounding, centering and shielding techniques throughout our shows. Indeed, my former partner Chloe narrated the same techniques in one of our earlier videos on YouTube. But I had my pondering head on one day back in 2018-2019 and began to realise there were serious flaws in the grounding, centering and shielding. Things didn't make sense. The flow of it, once I pondered, resembled a sort of spell casting and word magic to it. And this is likely borne out due to the New Age movement, which is the old system's attempt to replace organised religion with something new to follow, of which they control again. And so in came the New Age movement, riddled with spellcasting, word magic, crystals and other external objects, none of which people knew how to use them, and it was a giant trap set and many fell for it. If you're going to replace their system, you never replace it with another one that came from their philosophers, theologians or books. It's pure folly. We have all found out now that the Darwins, Blavatskys, Crowleys, Parsons et al. And even Einstein and Steiner were their people pushing their agendas. Otherwise, their books would have never been published. So what did the New Age do to change the ground, centre and shielding? The first thing I noticed is there is a word missing: clearing. The second thing I noticed is centering after grounding. Both of those items combine to distort the real version, which should be clearing, centering, grounding and then shielding. So why is that the case? Well, let's take the clearing first. The ground we all walk on has been destroyed with advanced weaponry, millions of deaths via war, plague and other criminal behaviours, not to mention the use of the Vril machines in the ground sending out negative frequencies, many of which have now been dealt with. It has been poisoned with pesticides, poor agricultural techniques, chemtrails and pollution from their greed-based energy formats, and the list goes on. So why should we assume the earth ground we walk on is clear? The answer is, it is not. So we are grounding to the traumas of the earth. How will that heal or balance us? The answer is, it won't. So to begin the discipline, one must clear the ground before you proceed with the rest of the discipline. And you begin by clearing the ground where your feet are placed or will be placed. Free it of all cords, malintentions and negative frequencies and entities. And then you come to centering, which is balancing, or the better known version in THI of 45-55. And this is done by going within, where you are free of fear, worry and other concerns, and in a state of calm and mild bliss. That state can be achieved quickly with a short meditation and or with some breathing work. You breathe in through the nose for a count of 3. Hold on to it for a count of 3 and then release it through the mouth for a count of 3 for a total of 9. And once that centering or balancing state is achieved, only then do you anchor to the earth, which is grounding. The reason being is, if you are off-centre or balanced when grounding, you will be out of alignment before doing something and your shielding will not work properly. And you can also set the intention with grounding for it to be for your highest spiritual path. The shielding part is important for your own protection and safety and is your responsibility. Complaining of attacks whilst not doing your shielding is victimhood mentality. And for those who have not yet honed their ability to see yourself, call in your higher self to allow you to view you. But when you can see yourself, can you see any holes in your PSI field? Any wires or cords sticking out? Any anomalies like small entities? Yes, you will see them. Little gremlins called the dorsi. You remove wires and anomalies and then repair the holes in your field. Now, whilst viewing yourself, create a circle around you and seal beneath your feet. That is important. Close it off. Remember, you are a portal. And then start a 6 to 9 foot wide spiral, going up your body in a cone shape, with no more than 6 to 9 inches between the rings. And if done correctly, the spiral will be a mixture of blue and white light. Now, if as you are spiraling up your body slowly, it stops or stalls, that is your opportunity to clear a blockage with a burst of energy from your feet to above your head, or you can push the blockage out sideways. And the spiral will start moving up and again if you have cleared it. Bring it all the way up and into a point about 12 inches or so above your head. And it should look like a blue and white cone. Then you go about creating your weaponry or armoury to protect the shield on the outside of the cone. Various methods can be used, perhaps fire, swords, electric zapper or other tools, with the intention to ward away all entities not for your benefit. And it is important you verbalise the intention. Get creative. This is unlimited to your imagination. And this is a very useful practice before bed, and after a time it can be done more intermittently and not a nightly ritual per se, if no attacks were happening to you in the meantime. This is useful during the day if you start to feel interference or a bit off, feelings of something is wrong. This is your intuition warning you. Take notice of it and then correct it immediately. This next section is called Host Possession. And in light of the Rudolf Steiner quote, where he stated the following: with such a vaccine, you can easily make the etheric body loose in the physical body. And once the etheric body is detached, the relationship between the universe and the etheric body would become extremely unstable, and man would become an automaton, for the physical body of man must be polished on this earth by spiritual will. And that had all the hallmarks of off-world genetic manipulation to me. How would they know of these things over 100 years ago, when we are told that medicine was in its infancy? We were told we barely knew how the anatomy works, even less so of how the brain works, and yet here is a man talking of detaching the silver cord which connects us to the various planes via vaccines. Does this make any sense whatsoever? Cutting the etheric cord in a child before age 7, or if the child does not gain the etheric cord by that time, renders that child, in their terms, retarded for the rest of its life. A loss of that cord renders the spirit unable to travel, and if the spirit is trapped outside of the vessel, that person dies. And I believe this partially explains coma cases, whereby the person is suspended between the planes and the spirit only partially was able to get back into the vessel, rendering the patient alive, but not awake, as a larger portion of the spirit is trapped between the physical, etheric and astral planes. But why were the highly decorated scientists speaking this way? Why would they want to remove the etheric body? What purpose does it serve science? In our world of thinking, none. But their way of thinking operates very differently than ours, because the one thing that helps for host possession entities is an empty vessel. And many beings are or were trapped in the etheric and astral levels, unable to go back to source and in suspended animation per se, just waiting for an opportunity to host possess somebody's vessel. So what were the conditions and modes of operation for these walk-ins to arrive in such vast numbers? And here are some of the examples. 1. Alcohol. They call it spirits for a reason. Genie is a modern term for jinn. And who comes out of the bottle when it's rubbed? The genie or the jinn, which grants you 3 wishes. But it's not wishes, it is magic, which they perform, only you pay the price of soul possession in most cases. The Arab term al-kahul was the origin of alcohol. Al means God, kahul means ghoul, which means spirit. And so alcohol means the spirit god. Now in the 17th century, alcohol was then described as distilled and rectified spirit. And a description of rectified spirit is rectified spirits, also known as neutral spirits. Rectified alcohol or ethyl alcohol of agricultural origin is highly concentrated ethanol. I wonder whether adding ethanol to our cars is another way to infect us. And that has been purified by means of repeated distillation in a process called rectification. In some countries, as example India, denatured alcohol or denatured rectified spirit may commonly be available as rectified spirit, but it's poisonous and ingestion can be fatal. Wine is also a neutral spirit. Do you still want to consume that amount of alcohol? Alcohol was introduced here by the fake gods, in particular Osiris. 2. Drugs, pot or other psychedelics. The Greek original meaning of that is breathe, life and soul. Soul being the operative word. Psyche being of the mind. Delix comes from the term delos, which means manifestation. And so you have manifested something in your mind. The origin from the spirit realm, which is also the astral version, trap. And I can hear many of you go, no. But I'm sorry, this is exactly what those drugs do. And people often wonder why people who take them, the drugs, change. Think about it. They have changed because in many cases, it's not them anymore. Now they say it expands your consciousness, but have you considered it is not your consciousness that is expanded? It is not you that has expanded, it is the entity. 3. Mushrooms. They call it magic mushrooms for a reason, and all magic comes with a price, often a heavy one. 4. Ayahuasca and other derivatives. Described as hallucinogenic, or is it hallucinogeny? Again, it calls in the spirits. Hallucination, to affect with visions or imaginary perceptions. Except it is real and you are dancing with the dark spirits. All done by so-called shamans, which really means shaman. Shah means time or era, and so they are time men. Just not our time, but theirs. And the South Americans and many other tribal people were tricked into these ceremonies by the rogue ET groups here to engage a covenant or contract they had with the demons or jinns here, whereby they do their magic and dirty deeds, which comes with no karma as they have no physical form. Jinns get to inhabit vessels and also consume life force energy, both in here and also the astral realm. 5. Tribal-based ceremonies involving circles, rhythmic beats to bring in their ancestors. Except it wasn't their ancestors they were bringing in. Just a copy of a copy, which was fake. 6. Witchcraft, Druidism and paganism, all involved in bringing in the demons, jinns or dark spirits. Female witches congregate in a circle, often with a pentagram, which was also on Solomon's ring, I might add. The one on his finger, perhaps there was one on his arsehole as well. Who called in and worked with the demons and left us with their presence for 3,000 years and called in the spirits. The circle they create is the portal or the gateway to call them in, whilst the witches all stand on the edge of the circle or connected to each other by hand to bind the circle and open the portal. And people may tell you they are light witches and fully believe it, but in reality they've been fooled and seduced by the dark. 7. Praying. Then they got people praying to the Lord, who is Anu, the Draco Reptile King, which is an energy harvester, which again feeds these very entities. And it's all part of the pact they made with the demons. External praying is the harvesting of your energy. You are not praying, you are being preyed upon. Mediums. 8. Mediums and channelers also call in the spirits, but they have no idea who or what they're calling in either. And most channeling is linked to an AI system operated by the Greys. 9. Alchemists. Alchemist means the chemist god, or is it chem or chemist? who created potions that again, depending on what was mixed, called on the spirits to manifest. But they only manifest into another body. Magic potions, or is it magi potions? Earlier genic, when removed the C, it becomes genai, as in jinn. Magic without the C is magi, and now the most famous magi is Sinbad, who is the owner of 7 jinns, the genie in the bottle, like alcohol is. 10. Wetiko. The Native Americans use a term Wetiko for a different type of walking. The Wetiko meaning, it means solely for the self, but can only host on people who exhibit similar traits for greed, selfishness, service to self, and excess. 11. Selling your soul. Then people began at a later date to sell their soul out for fame, wealth, and titles, oblivious to the real value of what they were given away. Selling your soul is not metaphorical. It is a literal selling of your soul and life force. Which is why so many famous people look blank, vacant, act strange, appear aloof, never seem happy, life filled with drama to keep them and the walk-ins occupied. It's all theatre and fakery. 12. Indian spiritual practices like the Kundalini and Tantric practices is another ways of host possession. There was more details on that in From His Story to Our Story 8a and 8c. 13. Sex is another way of infecting a host, and the most prevalent form of it is sodomy, a common theme for the Cohen priests with the boy parishioners. Now you know why. The sodomy also invokes the strong man, which is another host possession. 14. Yoga. The practice of yoga that is also an avenue for host possession, which can be averted by shielding prayer, a practice that is oblivious to the various yoga teachers and experts, it seems. Now, I'm not here to tell you what to do. I have given you the knowledge and warning of these practices. These are your choices you have to make in life. Your responsibility, your own consequences of actions that you have to consider before making your choices. In my opinion, you will never advance spiritually or soul develop by over-consuming alcohol or taking any drugs or magic potions either. Alcohol in small doses, drugs never, is my advice. Next section, psionics and natural abilities. Psionics, it is said, can be a bit confusing, which is why many people, even those with psychic powers, aren't fully aware of what it means and how to use the energy, which is in part true, but another part is people are frightened of their own power, frightened of their own skills and abilities, but you have to learn to embrace them in a balanced way. Never use your abilities in a low vibrational way. Hate, anger, revenge or retribution because you don't like someone or something is not the cue for you to use your abilities in that way, or you will lose them. Use them not for the benefit of the self as well. It works best when done for the benefit of others. And here's a list of what they called psychic, and the word starts with PSY, when it should be PSI. These PSI abilities are what one can attain by developing the self. Psychic abilities, astral projection or mental projection, which is the ability to voluntarily project an astral body or mental body being associated with the out-of-body experience in which one's consciousness is felt to temporarily separate from the physical body. Beware the term astral travelling. It is a mind meme trap. Beware also being in the simulation astral. It may look familiar, but things and people are out of place is your clue. Automatic writing is the ability to draw or write without conscious intent. That is conduiting with a higher force. Bilocation is the ability to be present in two different places at the same time. They will say it's usually attributed to a saint, which is the Draco. And what a load of bollocks that is. But they have to throw in the biblical drivel, don't they? And it has zero to do with saints, religiosity or fake gods either. But use this skill set wisely. Never impinge on the privacy of others. And again, best used for the benefit of others, not the self. But bilocation can take you anywhere your frequency allows. Whether that's somewhere else on this planet or on other planets and solar systems. Energy medicine is the ability to heal with one's own empathic, etheric, astral, mental or spiritual energy. And like I said, who needs fake medbeds when we can heal thyself? And this ability will even save you thousands of dollars in medical bills and insurance also. But a word of warning about this: you cannot heal others unless you are healed yourself. And also this energy, unlike what the New Age programs will tell you, is not unlimited energy. Use it wisely and sparingly. If you use it too much, you will die. Particularly if it's in a condensed period of time. And the reason for that is you're using your own life force energy in the healing. And yes, you will get cosmic energy back, but it takes time to integrate. And real healing is draining for the healer. They need time to recover. Ergokinesis is the ability to influence the movement of energy, such as electricity, without direct interaction. This can be used also to change the weather. The clowns and dark forces can only do it by means of technology. We don't need it. And again, use it for the benefit of the all or others, and do not use it frivolously either. Also be careful what you wish for in terms of weather interactions. Levitation or transvection is the ability to float or fly by so-called mystical means. It is a rare ability based on evidence in the physical 3D model, but it is a useful tool to master in the dream time. Transvection means the act of supernatural flight, such as by a witch. Yeah, right. But interestingly, in these times, it is also to do with manipulating genes. Cosmic genetics covers that more deeper. Materialization is the creation of objects and materials or the appearance of matter from unknown sources. This is more common than people think and is one of the more easier disciplines to come by and also engage. Again, used wisely and for the benefit of others, all it takes is patience and 100% belief in the self and some self-mastery. Mediumship or channeling is the ability to communicate with spirits, and that line is misleading as it's not only the spirits, it is the ability to engage anything and everything outside of here based on your soul development level. Now, the spirit world has been corrupted, and so is not something a novice or someone with poor understanding of it should be engaging. The evidence of which can be found in the messed up lives of people who did drugs, excess alcohol, and ayahuasca. Channeling is a no-no. You are engaging an AI machine being operated by the Greys, mainly. A channel can also be seen as a portal or gateway, also, and why that is dangerous. You have no idea who potentially you could be letting in. Petrification is the power to turn a living being to stone by looking them in the eye, which is a low self-worth. A low vibrational thing in my opinion. Anyway, Medusa springs to mind here. Medusa could only be killed by cutting off her head, just like the reptilians. Funny that. Was the wood in the petrified non-forest done by this skill set or by using a powerful underground weapon? But like I said, that skill set is more based on lower vibration of hate, anger, and or retribution. Prophecy, also prediction, premonition, or prognostication, is the ability to foretell events without using induction or deduction from known facts. And prophecy is also used by many people, and yet not recognized as such. Again, it is widely available as one of the lower skill sets. If you study and understand life, and in particular the patterns of such, then you will see. Biblical prophecy is utter rubbish, and people need to understand they are plans, not prophecies. They can turn into prophecies if they get enough people to engage with it. That is how it works. In essence, it is the power of persuasion and also manipulation. And prophecy is easy to develop once you understand the whole thing repeats and cycles, as our show has done many times. Psychic surgery is the ability to remove disease or disorder within or over the body tissue via an energetic incision that heals immediately afterwards. And yes, that is true. And yes, it is real. But it requires much energy to do so. Again, it is best used for the benefit of others. Psychokinesis or telekinesis is the ability to influence a physical system without physical interaction, typically manifesting as being able to exert force, control objects and move matter with one's mind. And many people can do this lower end skill set and not recognise it as such. For example, the weather. People via thought projection or by repeating words, music or pictures. And this is also the remit of the MK Ultra program. But if you have the right frequency of your PSI field, you can influence people around you as far out as 25 miles. Again, without recognising you are doing so for the most part. You don't have to consciously think of it. You just be. And people don't use their brains or imagination enough to engage this skill set. Again, used for the benefit of others, not the self on this. Pyrokinesis. I wonder who has this skill set. The ability to control flames, fire, or heat using one's mind. One of the higher power skill sets and very rare. Although we do have one who exhibits it in the village quite regularly, I hear. I digress. IDDHI. IDDHI. Psychic abilities gained through Buddhist meditation. And after our series From His Story to Our Story and the so-called corrupted versions of the Rus Sanskrit texts, I'm not so sure about this skill set at all. Why is it only linked to Buddha? More human limitation programming, if you ask me. Shape-shifting or transformation is the ability to physically transform the user's body into anything, often associated with off-world entities, in particular the reptilians, but shape-shifting is not as common as some of the alt media like to portray. It is an ability to change frequency in terms of the sight of the observer, and that is the most prevalent in this discipline, mixed with the power of persuasion via thoughts, which is how the Sasquatch are able to avoid detection by and large. They do not vanish into thin air, they are still there, but in essence cloaked in with the background, like the predator being in the movie. But those with good eyes and a heightened sense capability can either feel their presence and or see it by a slight shimmer in the region. And it looks like above the road on a hot day, the watery mirage only less visible, almost like a glitch in the pixelated background. Thoughtography is the ability to impress an image by burning it on the surface using one's own mind only. Used by advertisement agencies to costly effects. And again, if used, do it for the benefit of others in a higher vibrational pattern. A bit like our blueprint Flower of Life pattern. Xenoglossy is the ability of a person to suddenly learn to write and speak a foreign language without any natural means such as studying or research, but that is often rather bestowed by divine agents, or so they say. And this unfolds after a brain injury, which is suggestive that the person knew that language prior and somehow their brain was blocking it. And this has to bring in past life memories. As for divine agents, that I'm not too sure of at all. And again, it's like the Buddha reference. It is stating something from the external and something they can only bestow upon you. When I believe it is an internal gift bestowed on us all, that is triggered mainly by your own development. Witnessing is the gift of being visited by high-profile spiritual beings such as Mary, Jesus, or Father Sama, a Kala from the Buddhist traditions. Oh dear, here comes Project Bluebeam. And the great question is, how can you know if it's Mary or Jesus if you haven't met them? Or are you basing it on pictures of them, both that were drawn by people who were not alive when they were allegedly here? And it is the power of suggestion again. Jesus is the classic example, said to be from the Middle East, and yet all his disciples had quintessential British names. Oops. Inadia is the ability to survive without eating or drinking. Multiple cases have resulted in starvation or dehydration, I might add. And this is another higher level development that is exceedingly rare, and I do not recommend trying it in 3D. Remember, they're denser in the higher dimensions, so you don't need to eat or drink as much. In fact, you can't. Why? Because the body is too light, and so they consume energy. Now, inadia is a Latin word, and so a red flag for a start. It means fasting. Extrasensory perception, or sixth sense, is an ability in itself, as well as comprising a set of abilities. Now, sixth sense is misleading in some ways, because whilst it is an extra to the basic 5 senses, it doesn't mean there are only 6. And these type of centers only come from the heart space, not the mind. And this is developed by the self-mastery of the mind and brain, and then going on to develop the sword within, which when used correctly allows the individual to operate from the heart only. And once you master the dual hemispheres, open the third eye, open the throat chakra, and make sure your heart is not made of stone, otherwise the sword will cut you. Now, most of the following are lower end skill sets to work towards for the average individual. Clairvoyance is the ability to see things and events that are happening far away, to locate objects, places, people using a sixth sense. But not only the sixth sense, because this can also be done by location. Divination is the ability to gain insight into the situation using occult lists. And this may have had a differing meaning in the time of the mystery schools, but this is the dark art of witchcraft, magic, sorcery and spellcasting. Dowsing is the ability to locate water, sometimes using a tool called a dowsing rod. But the dowsing rod is the external tool, when if skilled, you would not need the rod. You would sense where the water is. Dream telepathy is the ability to telepathically communicate with another person through dreams. Done by most of you if you recognize it as such. The ability to interact with each other on a different plane. And many THI members have experienced this and also interacted with each other. Dermo-optical perception is the ability to perceive unusual sensory stimuli through one's own skin. And that is a fancy word for one who is in tune with their frequency fields. Use it wisely and not for personal gain. Psychometry or psychoscopy is the ability to obtain information about a person or an object by touch. Again, that is about the frequencies and being able to read people and their frequencies. Precognition, including psychic premonitions, is the ability to perceive or gain knowledge about future events without using induction or deduction from known facts. Now, most people have and can do this if they believe in themselves, but most pass it off as a coincidence. Remote viewing, telesthesia, or remote sensing is the ability to see a distant or unseen target using extrasensory perception. And again, use wisely and respect people's privacy. You will lose this ability not doing so. Retrocognition or postcognition is the ability to supernaturally perceive past events. But this is not supernatural at all. It brings in past life memory and or the ability to go in and out of time, where past, present and future merges into one. Telepathy is the ability to transmit or receive thoughts supernaturally. And we as a species do use telepathy at times, but again dismiss it. But I'm not sure with most people living and speaking in lies, low vibrational mindsets and thinking patterns that this skill set is wise as it stands. Violence, rage, anger and hate would erupt as you would find out exactly what people think of you and how many want to have sex with you and how many want to leave or reject you. We are not heart-centered enough to be ready for telepathy yet. It would be a complete disaster. Indeed we do. But will we take those opportunities and chances to make the difference? Now, one of the greatest issues is that some people gain abilities and run before they can walk or work with them. And it has a term for that. It's called imposter syndrome. And imposter syndrome is when someone continually doubts their own skills, expertise and achievements, usually despite evidence to suggest they're actually quite good at what they do. But the greatest issue with abilities is controlling the ego. And that is your greatest test of all the soul developments and hooks. It is called the hidden hook for a reason. I've seen so many rise to the mental planes, yet fall far quicker due to poor self-control, ego, and exhibiting one of the 7 deadly sins. These abilities are not to primarily serve the self. It is always best used in service to others. But some people get a few skills or do some missions and suddenly they think they are Neo or some all-important singular God. The saying is, it goes to their head, and therein lies the problem. You have gone out of the heart and back into the head. And these are all things we must all overcome. And are a 180 of our thinking patterns that have been bred into us via programming. We must break the program cycle of negativity. Negative has 8 letters, but so does positive. Enemies has 7 letters, but so does friends. Deceit has 6 letters, so does honest. Lying has 5 letters, so does the truth. Anger has 5 letters, so does happy. Hate has 4 letters, so does love. Hurt has 4 letters, so does heal. Fear has 4 letters, so does hope. Cry has 3 letters, and so does joy. And life is like a double-edged sword. You can turn every negative into a positive. It is your choice, and self-mastery overcomes it all. Always choose the better side of life. Psychic attacks. How to deal with and what are psychic attacks? These are sharp pain attacks generally around the temples, but can occasionally go across the forehead and even more rarely be a whole head attack. And this comes under the psychokinesis skill set for the sender. They project pain or discomfort to a target using thought projection to attack the intended target. And these are often misdiagnosed as migraine attacks, and so are rarely dealt with due to a lack of knowledge surrounding the issue. The key is to recognize it immediately. And the second it lands, create an image in your mind of the attacked area, create a box around it and seal it in, and then project it out of the body and return to the sender. You don't have to know who the sender is. Just return from whence it came. Now return to the sender in a range of force of 3 to 10 times the sender, and that often means the event doesn't repeat. But if it doesn't work the first, repeat the exercise until it goes away. Now some targeting people can be persistent. Increase the force of return each time if you started off at times 3. Do not get angry or out of balance by the event, as it was a useful exercise to master and ensures that events are limited. And make sure upon the return to sender, you make it clear you do not consent to these attacks also. The pathway of life. I showed some of you the path of life recently, and it is the capital letter N. And the first line up is the left-hand path, but it has no gate or exit. And those on the top of that first line think they have reached the pinnacle. They think they are the illuminated ones. And they are the gods known as the elites or elites. But this is the false light they bathe in, and that light of theirs is dimming by the day now. The left-hand path, which is also on the west, is the path of Set, and it leads to darkness only. Now, to get to the right-hand path, you have to slide down the middle, a steep descent, and here lies some of the sleepers and the majority of alt media. And the reason I say that is they are still following the lies spat out by the agency, clown-based agency groups, and are largely blaming something or someone else, neglecting the fact that despite being the 99%, they are somehow not responsible for the world's ills. wrong thinking. The slide down is subconsciously deemed as some sort of fall. That is an illusion. As above, so below applies here. And so what unfolds on the slide to the right-hand path? Well, this is where you unlearn all of the lies, unhook from all of the programs. And you have to strip away those lies, deceptions and illusions to come off the downward descent, starting the climb up the right-hand path. Now, where you are on the way up that path depends on the individual's ability to learn and understand the information. And people have said we have to wait for the sleepers to catch up. There are three things wrong with that thinking. One, how long did it take you to get where you are? Two, do you think that you will stand still to allow them to catch up? And three, if point two is correct, where are the pioneers or way showers to move forward going to come from? Do you think you are just going to stand still? For those who are on that path, eventually you will go through the gate. The right-hand path, unlike the left-hand path, has an open gate for progression. Some of you one day will go through that gate and back to where you belong, amongst the spiritual worlds and out amongst the stars. As for the rest, they had the exact same opportunity as you. They failed to take it. None of you are responsible for that, only themselves. Whilst they chose to point outside of themselves, we looked, embraced, and went inwards. The next section is called the library. This is what I call it personally. In essence, it is the collective consciousness that when you have developed enough, you can tap into it. These are known as Akashic records in other fields, and each person has their own depending on their skill set and frequency levels. Others telling you your Akashic records are all frauds. All of them. Now, the energy you put into developing yourself is paid back 1,000-fold, not in terms of shekels, but true value to the self, and can be used to benefit the all. All of us who joined the alternative media were seeking information, and eventually we found quite a lot and stored that data up. But there was always something missing, many of you will say, until you came to THI. And THI filled in many of the missing blanks on a base level, and then went on to adding layer upon layer upon layer in many fields of knowledge. And many of you have asked, where does he get all his knowledge? More so when they found out I have not followed the alt media circus since 2014. But I did spend thousands of hours researching all alt media from the middle 90s until that 2013-2014 time period, often 5 to 7 hours a day. But after 2013 and my own development, information started to come to me in a variety of forms, some traditional and some not. And once you develop the self and learn to tune yourself, the information which is all around you comes to you. And the things that I may need for an expansion of a story, added details or a new path, just randomly turn up. And if it's for me and the show, I get a signal that that piece is important and I open it. Now, the universe works in mysterious ways, they say. Yes, for the underdeveloped. But for those who open themselves to all possibilities and working on opening the channel to inner knowing, there is nothing mysterious at all. The Santis touched upon it when they said the laws of Rita and the ancestral laws were interconnected and helped a person to reveal himself throughout his life. They still help, but many don't use it. Someone is not helped precisely because they don't use it. A human is given a freedom of choice, and the gods help him only when he goes on the way of spiritual development. The development of the self negates the need to research. Re-search means you already have the knowledge. You just have to learn to tap into it. The method seek and ye shall find applies to this as well. And the library is a vast database of knowledge that is all around you. Once you reach certain levels and have an inner trust of the self, you will then be able to access portions of it based upon your development. As you evolve through the levels of frequency, more and more access is granted, provided you use it for the benefit of others, not just the self. Other aspects of this are downloads, louder buzzing of the left ear. You may not be able to interpret it, but your subconscious will and will guide you to it. I was initially guided to the material of the Rus, Levashov, Santis and the Ers by this very method. The chakras. The root or sex chakra equals the I am. This is where you define who and what you are. And that all feels very simple, and yet it's not, is it? And this is where we send mixed messages and the distortion between sex and love. The two are not in general one and the same. The overt posturing of sexuality has been thrust upon us all in the past 50 years, was done to add to the confusion. Females flirting more overtly than previous generations has also added to the confusion more. Sex, of course, has been used to entice us into buying stuff via advertisements, used to sell movies, magazines, and a whole range of other things. The selfie culture with the suggestive poses and pouts, all exhibiting a come and get me plea. Yet that is not what the majority of women are wanting, is it? All of which leaves the males confused and frustrated. So have we really defined the I am and who and what we are? The sacral chakra is the I feel level, but what do you feel? Compassion, love, empathy, or angst, envy, revenge, greed and fear? The I feel determines the level of frequency and vibration, which determines your path to the future. From how do you love to how do you feel? What are you feeling? Do you know what feelings or which feelings dominate your being? What thoughts or actions dominate your energy field? Do you feel only for the self, or have you expanded yourself into feeling for others? Now, the last question is a harder one to ask the self in its true form, as most will say they are service to others, yet their actions determine a more service to self path. And the problem is the lack of role models showing the true path of service to others, because society and think tanks have directed people to only look after number one only. And that is a survival tactic you are running on yourself. A fear, a defense mechanism. That is not being free or living. The solar plexus is the I do level, but what are you doing? Where is most of your energy going? And a good idea can be garnered by writing down what you do on any given day or week, like a financial assessment of your spending and earning, but based upon where your energy goes. What are you doing? Who is it for? Whose benefit is the task for? What are you thinking of? Is it the self or others? And it gives you an insight as to where you are, how you can make improvements to your life, and also soul development. The throat chakra is the I speak level, but do you speak or are you mute? Have you shut yourself down, or did your circle do that? And if you say the latter, I do get that, but ultimately it was you who consented to the silence. In the age of the internet, it was much easier to speak out prior to it, not so much. I spent from around the age of 10 to 34 as the silent man, as I was unable to engage anyone on the stuff I knew back then, and nobody would listen. And so the self-imposed exile from society in a speaking capacity, looking back, served me well. But the increase in speaking brought the rolled eyes, derision, rejection, and discarding we have all experienced. The third I is the I see level. But what do you see? And what do you not see? That's both flashbacks of memories of Arizona for those who went there. What do you see and what do you not see? Well, the answer is not a lot. Or it was back then anyway. And that has a much deeper meaning to many of you now, does it not? And members, particularly those who live around me or visited me, have all learned to see much more than they ever imagined. But our inability to see has caused us much pain, sorrow and suffering, merged with our ability to refuse to believe what the two eyes see. It was quite an illusionary world we all created for ourselves. The ability to see brings in greater trust of the self also, as we tune into this extra sight more. The more we see, the more we understand, the more we envisage, and the more we engage of what was the great unseen world. The crown chakra is the level of I understand, not to be mixed with the mind. The crown supersedes the mind in every way. In essence, it goes from understanding with the mind to understanding with the crown. It is a big leap in terms of development, as now you are truly becoming in touch with the self and the power contained within. You are then on your way to inner knowing, where there are no questions or answers, just an inner knowing and the connection to the collective consciousness and the great universal library, depending upon your scale of development. From there, researching ends. Inner knowing and an even greater trust of the self unfolds. The questions and answers comes to you when you need them. If they don't, you are not ready for it. And it's a bit like the saying, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. But in overview, you are the student and the teacher. The 6 chakras covered to date reveals the developmental levels required to attain higher soul and frequency development. That often requires the external you to get out of your own way. And I say external you because the internal you has been waiting for you all along. Inner triggers revealed that. And those frightened of the self and their own power will always be left behind with the steaming masses of crass stupidity and eternal saviour programs. We have one chakra left, the ultimate chakra in many ways, the heart. The heart chakra is the I love level and so much more. But did you love? Or did you fake it? Did you love the self? If no, you cannot love someone else, and it was all an illusion. The heart is the life giver for the vessel, the ultimate in creation of the soul spirit package that contains virtually every external technology known to man. But will you develop the self enough to experience those technological marvels? Most don't, and so remain stuck in the harvesting-based astral level. The heart, of course, brings in the sword when the other parts are mastered, but a closed heart will bring you pain via the cuts by your own sword. And the heart, like all the other chakras, has to be open and clear to work optimally. Operating through the heart is the easiest way to live possible, because now you trust, love and understand the self, and also operating in the fullest truth, as no longer can you lie to yourself. Out goes the low vibrational frequencies and traits, and in comes the harmonies of the universe that, when experienced, is barely describable. The greatest orchestra you will ever hear, and then in comes the love frequency as well. After that, you will know and experience what true love is all about. It is the true freedom to be and live. Heart-centered, which is balance of the heart, means you have removed the mind-set creation that is based upon illusion, and what follows is real and reality, all residing within the truth frequency. To be or not to be, that is the question. You do realise to be or not to be is not the question. It is the statement. That is the actual question, but what is that? What you decide it to be. And so in essence, it becomes another statement, not a question. It just requires your triality-based input. The higher developed person has access to more senses and chakras. We all have 5 senses and 7 chakras. But with development, you you can access another 7 senses and 5 chakras. This then means they both equal 12. Then comes the +1 with further development. Right, I'll be posting a couple of pictures shortly for this next section called self-mastery. And if you have mastered much of the above, in particular the sword of self-mastery, then you are well on your way to the next stage of development. Yes, there are other stages. And the next stage is where your mental plane abilities kicks in and the real treasures of you begins to unfold. But, and it's a big but, one must heed this warning when acquiring these treasures and abilities. One must act in high vibrational actions only. As one slip into the lower vibrational field and thinking will cause you to lose these skills very quickly, and it can be a very long road back to attaining them. Examples of low vibration: anxiety, sadness, guilt, shame, anger, greed, hatred, self-sabotage, argumentative, worry, complaining, negative, overly competitive, comparative, and the greatest cause of organ failure known as fear. Exhibit any of them and you are not ready for the mental planes. You can't have amazing skill sets operating within those parameters. Examples of high vibration: gratitude, joy, peace, compassion, understanding, playful, highly intuitive, present in the moment, patient, forgiving, positive, and the opposite of fear, love. And these are the dynamics you must obtain to develop the self onto the next levels. Right, bear with me a second. I'm going to post 2 pictures on the MeWe chat. These will be available on the transcripts as well. Where are we? And this will give you a visual of what I'm about to say. Right, with that posted, a big part of knowing you are in self-mastery and retaining the self-mastery is what I call the graphic equalizer test. And as you can see from the drawing A, there is a line across the middle which is the balance. And everything below that line is you. And nothing else must be inserted into it. Not partners, close friends, or family. That is your space to protect at all costs. And part of the problem I see with relationships, whether love, family, or acquaintances, is when it goes wrong, it often goes badly wrong. Bitterness, retribution, anger, and revenge all too often kick in, and all of which are low vibration. And the reason being is those people were inserted into each other's fields, which is the bottom section of drawing A. So if one is acting out low vibrational traits and the other is not, They are both experiencing it due to being in each other's field. This is how it works, or perhaps doesn't. And this can be counteracted by healing the interactions, forgiving yourself and the other, and disconnecting from that person on an energetic level, which is important to take note of, the energetic level. And as an example for the group, remember how I dealt with the fallout of the trustee. Actually, it wasn't a fallout at all. She just went off on a mad rant at me and all men for no reason or provocation. And what has followed from her since is a plethora of lies, none of which I fought against or returned fire back. Why? Because I know the truth, and the truth never has to defend itself. I wished her well and said time will tell, and it did. But without self-mastery, that would have turned into an internet war, which is exactly what she wanted to justify her stance. The reason she is still angry today is she knows what she did was wrong on a friendship level and worse on a working level. She is angry at herself, not me, and all of it is projection. But it was nice to see recently she's gone on to develop herself from once doing deals on peace treaties and planetary restoration into now how to do and apply makeup tutorials. So, how could this be accomplished? Well, you will see two boxes on drawing A, one called love and one called trust. So why just two? Because everything you need in life revolves around both of them. If you operate in love, you are not in fear. If you operate within trust, you are not in fear either. And remember, in the absence of love, fear reigns. You will notice there is a gap between the bottom of both boxes and the middle line. This is to allow for expansion and impart a safety net. And this should be a maximum of 10 to 15% from the balance line in the middle. The balance line is actually your PSI field. Now with the love box, you must endeavour to place all people within that box. With the trust box, you must endeavour to place all people within that box as well. And this is not an easy task for most people, as the love and trust factor between most people are very low. But to obtain self-mastery, one must overcome those hurdles and embrace those two factors. And people will ask as to why we must put people we hate, dislike, not get along with in either of those boxes. The love box, people will ask, why should I put people I don't love within that box? The trust box will ask, why should I put people who have wronged me in the trust box at all? And they're all very good questions. Why should all be in the love box? A, it means you are residing in the love frequency. B, it means you have mastered more of yourself. C, if you don't love people, you fear them. D, fear is a low vibration that will never help your development. And finally, E, it means you do not love yourself enough. Why should all be in the trust box? Because A, you have mastered the self more. B, you have learned the lessons some people have taught you by doing wrong against you. C, if you don't trust people, you fear them. D, fear is a low vibration that doesn't serve you well. And in E, it means you don't trust yourself. And people will argue, I do trust myself, but that person was nasty, robbed or cheated on me. All of those actions are for you to overcome and let go, which means you have dealt with the situation and have mastered it. You no longer fear, worry or are concerned about that person. They are at arm's length, so to speak, in a range span of 10 to 50%, depending upon how you assess each person. Now, for those who struggle with this concept, you can extend the love and trust box more than the 50%, but never discard people totally. If you choose to place people outside of the two boxes and further back into the sub 50% section, it means you are not in control of the situation or of the self. But as you integrate and embrace more of you, less and less people should be in the sub 50% range. That means you are making progress and becoming more aware of you and learning to master people and all situations. In drawing B, you will see the same boxes in the other section plus two other boxes. The in love box is your partner. He or she is more advanced than the love of other people due to the union between the two people. The act of making love is part of the union, and a greater bond and type of love emerges between the two people. Hence, that person is always closer to you than all others. Also, to add into that in love box should come your children, as again they were created out of the in love bond with your partner, and the love factor is higher for the children than all others as well. The in trust box are people within your circle that you have brought closer to you in trust. These will include partners, children, family and friends based upon your own interactions with them. Should any of these people cause you to mistrust, then they would go back into the other trust box and further away from you in your field and heart centre. Some will ask, what happens if I push them off the page? Well, the truth of doing that is you threw yourself off of the page, as you have neglected and abandoned yourself. And too often people are thrown out of your lives over trivial things as well as the more serious matters. But that has not served anyone well in overview either. By discarding people, you are discarding you. Why? Because you fear them upsetting you more, or you mistrust them, which means you have a fear of trusting people. Life is lonely enough without pushing people too far away, even people you don't like, because that is based in fear as well. A fear you cannot handle that person, and so you push them out of range. But what happens next? Well, what happens next is another person will come along and act like the person you just got rid of. Why? Because you didn't learn the lesson. You discarded it and the person. And so another one comes along for you to correct your stance and behaviour. And the key is to make peace with people who hurt or harm you. Love them regardless of their actions. Trust them at arm's length regardless of their actions, as they may have been your lesson. Or more importantly, you taught them a lesson, and hopefully they will self-correct and earn your trust again. Forgiveness is one of the virtues of higher frequency and soul development. Rejecting, non-forgiving, retribution, anger and rage are for lower frequency people and non-soul developing people. People may ask, but how can you love someone but don't like them? The answer is you stay in the love zone and frequency and retain the essence of you. Not follow the path of the many who fail to reach those levels. The key is to process failed relationships, whether in love, family or friends. Forgive yourself and the others and let that emotion of negativity between you go. But you hold a space for them in the two boxes, as you never know whether those people will return one day and impact your life again. If they do return in a good way, that's great, but you set boundaries. If they don't return in a good way, you retain you, and the lesson is learnt. Right, seems to be a bit of a mix-up with the pictures. Very interesting. That was not what I sent, but there you go, not to worry. I've just resent them, the two pictures, drawing A and B. These will be included on the transcripts. The final piece tonight, the ending message is remember what you have, not what you haven't. Remember how far you have come, not focus on how far you have to go. This was never a race, a sprint or a dash. It is and always was a long-term project that will go beyond my time here and many of you also. But we lay the foundations before putting up the walls and installing the roof. An untold amount of benefits await once you develop you. And that goes way beyond how many shekels you have, way beyond how many material things you collect also. It makes life and living simpler. That gives you more time to enjoy what you wish to do. You will be healthier as less stress, traumas, negativity, drama and arguments enhanced by the ability to heal thyself. You will have a much less chance of acquiring negative karma operating in this way also. And that will help this life and the next one. It puts you closer to Source, the all-encompassing Creator, and the one-on-one with the One. It enables you to travel the stars without the use of tin cans. You learn greater discernment, you stand in truth, and you don't have to waste energies defending your truth or lies against you. And everything you have earned in this lifetime in terms of soul development, you take with you into the next lifetime. Everything then becomes more about love than the burdening, soul-reducing limitation and heaviness like a lead balloon that the fear program brings. Heavy or sad balloons will never rise. Only the empowerment of the self will rise you not only on this plane, but many others. You will have a greater sense of purpose and achievement. Manifesting things can become easier as well. And all the above heard tonight is to get you all onto being better people, much higher versions of yourself, and pursuing the soul dream to reach the highest levels possible. Where that is, whether it's planetary, galactic, universal, or multiversal levels, where with the right soul development your soul can become a planetary mother or father, a solar mother or father being, and eventually on to becoming the source of your own universe. These are the paths and goals we all strove to undertake on a soul level, and we must remember them and go upward. Not acting like sad, deflated balloons on the looping linear conveyor belt of anti-life. To go on to becoming gods and goddesses, and hopefully do much better than many of those who went before us. Why have I done these pieces? Well, someone had to tell you that you were all on the wrong path. Our ratio on this planet of becoming higher evolved beings is ridiculously low, and that has to change. But from a higher perspective, the notion that the gods on the golden path send 1,000 souls to this planet with the hope that just one makes it is unbearable and also an indictment for us all. We have to improve that ratio considerably. It is completely unacceptable, and it all starts with you. This has been the Truth, Honour and Integrity Show. My name's Thomas Williams. Bye for now.